Hello, everyone. This is Phil Golfi with REMAX, the Golfi Team. Welcome to the Golfi Real Estate Show, Hamilton edition with host Rick Zamperin.
Yeah, you're listening to 900 CHML. Great to have Phil back on the big stage here as Rob takes a bit of a break. I'm sure he's a busy guy, as you know. He is the man behind the number one REMAX team in Canada, the Golfi Team, 905-575-7700. Online at robgolfi.com. That's Rob, Golfi.com. If you want to sell your house or you're in the market to buy a house, call the Golfi Team today. Again, 905-575-7700. We got some pretty good topics on the slate today, including affordability issues, which seems to be top of mind for everyone these days. But this comes with a little bit of a different twist, pitting Oakville against Burlington. We'll explain in just a matter of minutes, but we'll begin with what we usually do here on the Golfi Show, recapping the real estate life that was for Mr. Phil Golfi.
Yeah, it's been a busy couple weeks here. I feel like we're in this last rush before Christmas, the last rush before the holidays. Anybody who had a goal to buy this year or who's been thinking about moving or selling, this is kind of the last few weeks before we get into that holiday season. And when it gets in late into December, it really, really quiets down and everyone looks toward the new year. But in looking back on, most recently, October was such a quiet month for real estate. We were in kind of a no man's land position. We were waiting for the next interest rate announcement. The phones were quiet. The showings were down when looking at the stats from our appointment center. But when we got into November, it's like somebody shot us out of a rocket ship, and the market started to pick up. We had listings that, were long on the market, weren't getting showings for a while. And then all of a sudden we had 2-3 showings in the same weekend. And there was a lot of inventory that started to move in November in comparison to October. I think October was the worst time to sell your house this year, or the most difficult time to sell your house. I tried to sell one of my properties in October, and I'm not just saying this because it was my personal property, but I thought I priced it right. I priced it competitively. It was a good product. And I said I expected it to sell within 2 to 3 weeks, and we got one showing, and that was it. And amongst a lot of our listings, our team's listings, and looking back at that October market, it was slow and quiet. But as we got into November, things started to pick up. And pick up really, really quickly. And we can even see, in just looking at the stats, a lot of the prices took a little jump in comparison to year over year from November 22 versus November 23. The one that sticks out the most, or the biggest jump, would obviously Flamborough. There's always those massive swings, but Oakville. Mm-hmm. Oakville was one, and that's one we'll get to. But in terms of just looking at our Golfi Team Market Watch, the one that we send out to everyone on a monthly report, the prices are still strong and still appreciating in some certain areas and levels. And even getting into, certain areas of Hamilton that have jumped significantly, and still see a really, really good, market action and market appreciation. One thing that I wanted to get into, and I know I talked to you about this off the top of the show, is when I got into this business, I got into it mid-2016. So 2016, I was able to get my feet wet, learn a little bit of the business, and then 2017 came in, and the market just took off. And that was like, the first introduction into multiple bidding wars and over asking and very low inventory. And that's the market that I learned in right when I came into real estate. That was like my first introduction into selling real estate. And, what I remember most about that is I didn't have this huge, massive track record like my dad, and understanding these market swings and these price swings and inventory levels and things like that. But when I started to come out of that 2017 market, we obviously had that that government introduced those, the 16 measures to cool the housing market, which included the foreign buyers tax, included the stress test, and there was, a multitude of other things that were implemented. And then their number one strategy was to cool the housing market. And at the time, it felt like prices fell right off a cliff, and they did, right? And just looking at it, I went back and looked at it. The benchmark price in Hamilton and Niagara for detached for homes, for all homes, was $452,000. Okay, this price, it took 2 years to make up that number. So in March of 2019, the benchmark price was $450,000. I think we're in a similar position right now where, it's the end of 2023. We're looking back on the previous market of 22, where we had a very similar style market, low inventory, multiple offers, low interest rates, and there was, a lot of the prices, or there's a lot of consumers right now that are looking at what they paid for their house if they bought in 22, and are concerned about, maybe they're underwater in a certain area, or concerned about what's going to happen to prices in the future. So in comparing it back to that market of 2017, it took us 2 years to make up that difference in terms of that pricing. Who knows where we're going to be next year? I think next year is going to be a big moving year in terms of prices, in terms of what's going to happen to our market. I think it's going to, I don't think anybody really knows what's going to happen, but we will know when that spring market comes, if it takes off like it has in the past, or if the inventory climbs and the buyers aren't there. So I truly believe that we're going to appreciate next year in terms of prices, for a number of different factors. We'll get into the interest rate announcement recently, but I do think that there's going to be a more price appreciation. And I do think that if people are patient with their current house right now, and they will make up that number in terms of a price appreciation growth, and will exceed past what they paid if they bought in that super hot market of 22.
Phil, I'm glad you pointed out the price portion, the benchmark price portion of the Golfi Market Watch report, because while I looked at that, the one set of stats that jumped out to me was on the sales portion of it, because you mentioned a whisper quiet October. When you look at November 2023, the month that just passed by, compared to November 2022, in Ancaster, Dundas, Flamborough, Glanbrook, there is a difference, and Hamilton, included in there too. There's a difference of 6 home sales, and that is on the plus side. 6 more homes were sold last month compared to November of 2022, which speaks to me, especially after a very quiet October, that either October was rock bottom or November is a really big blip, because who knows what December is going to hold. What do you make of those numbers that were up 6 compared to the last time during November?
Yeah, just from like the eye test, and just from my own experience, that's what I've been talking to people about a lot. Is October felt like it was this bottom of the barrel market. It felt like there wasn't a lot of activity. There wasn't a lot of showings coming up. We would list houses at really good prices and at very marketable homes in nice areas, and we weren't getting the action that we expected. So I would say, October was bottom of the barrel for us. And I think rock bottom, I don't know about that, but it feels like we're starting to build that momentum and build that ground. And I think, there's almost like a little bit of anxiety coming up for the spring for buyers. It's like, well, if the interest rates start to come down in the spring, which they will, and we'll get to that again when we talk about the interest rate announcement. When the interest rates come down in the spring, what's that going to do to the housing market? Is everybody going to come at once? Is the inventory going to be there to support the amount of buyers that all come into the marketplace at once? If it's not, housing prices are going to climb. And if you're a buyer right now and you've had a goal to buy this year, or you're thinking of making a move, I think there's almost like that, if I buy now, I avoid that spring market, and are we going to get into the multiple offers and the multiple bids again? So who knows what's going to happen this spring. I think though, what we're talking about right now is the buyers today in today's market want to get in before the new year and before we get into that spring market of next year to secure their spot.
Just in the final minute, I was just looking at the sales stats again. If you drop Burlington and Niagara Falls into that conversation I just had in terms of sales stats, November 2023 to November 2024, we're adding only 2 more sales year over year. It's almost identical. Yeah. November to November. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
We got a couple minutes in this segment. I do want to ask you, because you hearken back to 2017, we're not seeing as many, I guess, government initiatives in terms of trying to tamp down the market. The big conversation is we need more supply. What do you think that is going to do for the conversation heading into 2024?
Yeah. I mean, supply, I've always said this. We were in a housing crisis at the beginning of this year. That crisis just hasn't gone away. The interest rates have risen and has brought the affordability down. But we're still in a housing crisis. We still need more homes. We still need more supply. We still need more places for people to live. So, those are almost 2 different separate conversations. The supply still isn't there. But it's just there's an affordability issue that is directly correlated to the increasing and rising interest rates as it stands in today's market.
Before we get into interest rates, now we were talking about this in our previous segment. There was an interesting quote from the president of the Realtors Association of Hamilton Burlington when the November stats came out. And Nicholas Von Bretto said, quote, "Much of the recent growth in new listings has been driven by higher priced homes, creating buyer market conditions in the upper end of the market." What are you seeing with the upper end of the market here in Hamilton? Is it very active? Is it a buyer's kind of market when it comes to those higher priced homes?
Yeah, big time. I mean, with those higher priced homes, if they're carrying a large mortgage on it, a lot of the times is those people have been significantly impacted even more by the interest rate hike. So, it's a very difficult market to work in right now because it's very, in terms of people that are looking for those style of homes or those high-end homes, the market's not out there. They're still moving in certain areas in certain cases. It's very property specific, but absolutely right. That quote is bang on. We're seeing a lot of people in the high-end market that are considering or have come to market with their property in today's market and are trying to sell. So like I said, it's directly correlated to the interest rates. Maybe it's these people that are looking at their renewal coming up and saying, my mortgage payment might jump $4,000 to $5,000 in some cases, right? If you locked in at a rate of 1.5% to 2% and your rate's going to jump to 6 or 7, that's an area of concern, and that's a massive lifestyle change. And it's these people that are looking forward to that and saying, you know what, let's consider selling and reducing our expenses, our monthly expenses. So we see that a lot, right? And I think we've seen such a drastic jump in these interest rates in a short period of time where people are being forced to make a decision in terms of what they want to do with their house and whether they want to stay in it and kind of try and weather the storm or if they want to move on and find something more affordable.
One more topic when it comes to the stats from November, and this is an interesting one too. It's out of the Toronto Region Real Estate Board, TREB, which issued its stats for November, and it really uncovered an interesting scenario because Burlington, and Phil, you just bought a home in Burlington and Oakville, which many will say are almost the same kind of city in terms of the properties that are available. There's obviously some differences here and there, but the average overall price of a home in Burlington dropped 10% in October, while in the same month in Oakville, it went up 11%. Can you make heads or tails of what's happening?
Yeah. I mean, on the surface, when I look at those stats, is Burlington has a much larger condo market now in comparison to before. There's a lot of new condos that have been built and developed that will drag that overall price down. And especially in terms of the movement of those condos, there's a ton of condo inventory in Burlington right now. Oakville does have that too, but not as much in comparison. But it's interesting to see such a drastic difference in comparison to the two markets, where one has, you know, a double-digit price appreciation growth and the other one is going the other way. But that's what I can allude it to is, you know, in Burlington, I think if you dive deeper into the stats and have more of a, you know, a micro analysis on it and start to look at the specific type of properties that are being sold when that in regard to those stats, I would say that the condos in Burlington, there's a lot more of them. The condo market is much wider and bigger, and there's just more inventory of them. So if you have, more, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 condo selling in comparison to a multi-million-dollar home, that's just going to drag down your average price, benchmark price point.
I'm happy to know that, since you've moved to Burlington, the price did not drop just because you moved into town. So that's pretty cool. That's right. I'm just kidding. Let's get into some really good news. And it came finally from the Bank of Canada holding its key interest rate to 5%. And a lot of people were kind of worried, given where the economy is or where it might be heading, as to whether or not the central bank would drop the rate or increase the rate, I should say, one more time. But it's hold the line. We're still at 5%. Phil, what kind of impact do you think this is going to have? Are people going to just stand pat for a little while longer, hoping like heck that rate comes down in 2024?
Yeah, I would say this is the first sign of good news for the interest rate market. I think we've seen the bond markets come way down, which is a sign that the interest rates eventually, more so in the near future, are going to start coming down. But I think this is the first beginning of light at the end of the tunnel, the first sign of good news for people out there that are so engaged and observed by these interest rates, which we all have been. We talk about it every single day. Where are the rates going? What are they going to do? What are they announcing? So the first time, the tone was different in regard to the most recent rate announcement, like as you said, where they held rates. I think that as we, they highlighted and there's some speculation that our first rate drop will be in the spring of next year, sometime around March. And I think that, combined with that, with the spring market in terms of where we're going to go with houses, that's where I see this price appreciation growth coming during that time. I expect the spring market coming up. And when I allude to spring, I mean, that February, March market. I think that market's going to take off. If you combine a lot of buyers that are going to be coming into the market, combined with the interest rates dropping, I think it's a recipe for this market to really, really heat up. But we've all been so engaged and observed of these interest rates. It's like they have such an effect on our overall housing market in terms of what we do, our lifestyle, our living, and everything. And we're so captivated by it right now. And I think, like I said, next year it's going to be really, really interesting to see where these interest rates go, how they do it, when they do it, and the effect that it's going to have overall on our market.
Do you think this is bigger or maybe better news for home sellers as opposed to home buyers? Or are they in the same bucket? I'm just envisioning someone who has wanted to sell their home, but they're looking at interest rates and there's not a lot of buyers out there and they might press pause until the spring. Or is it buyers thinking, wow, now the rates are going to be going down. I mean, that's good news for me to get a more favorable mortgage rate. Or maybe they're both winners.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Now, if you're buying and selling in the same market, it's all relative, right? It's all, it's a wish and, it's all together. Now, who this affects most is, I think it's the older population in terms of, somebody who's been in their house for 50 years or somebody who's mortgage free on their house and they're looking to downsize. I think this is who it affects most. And then the first time buyer, right? Those two people will be affected by the interest rates the most, in my opinion. Getting into the first time buyer, the first time buyer has an opportunity to get into the market when the prices are low. We always use that term. It was date the rate and marry the house, right? And that was true. Is they can get in. The prices dropped, and they were able to get in for a much affordable value. Their down payment would be a lot less in comparison to what it was last year. Their monthly cost might be a little bit more, but there was options for them to be able to get into like a 2-year fixed mortgage rate and then renew, and hopefully they're renewing at a lesser value or a lesser rate to drop their monthly mortgage payment. So the first time home buyer is highly affected by these rates. If these rates drop and the prices appreciate at a rapid pace again, that it's going to really, really affect the first-time home buyer. Now, when it comes to the older population, more so the baby boom population, this is their nest egg, right? This is they've worked their whole life to pay off their house. They're carrying a very low mortgage on their home. They have they're setting themselves up for the rest of their life in terms of retirement, in terms of the next phase that they're going into. Either they're going to go rent, or they're going to go into a retirement home, or buy a condo, or something like that. But there's going to be a big lifestyle change coming for them in terms of downsizing and so on. So for them, this number in terms of interest rates will not affect them in terms of a monthly payment, but it'll affect the value of their home. And so what we've seen, somebody lives in $1 million house, it's the values maybe decrease 50 to 100,000, but that's a big number for someone who has their entire retirement savings in their house. And so we've seen those people in terms of that population want to wait and sell and sell when the prices come back up and appreciate to the levels that they were in 2022. So those are the two main parties that I kind of pick out and I think will be affected mostly. But the families that are going from a townhouse to a detached house because they need more space and they have a growing family and so on, they're not affected as much because they're like I said, they're buying and selling and trading in the same market. But it's that first time home buyer who's looking to get into the market, and then it's that baby boom retiree market, the person that's looking to downsize or get out of the market. Those are the two pillars that will be affected most. And those are the two pillars that are like I said, I use the word engaged and observant. Those are the two that are watching the interest rates the most, in my opinion.
We've seen time and time again, anyone who brings the Golfi team onto their side to sell their home, they're going to get millions of eyeballs on their property. And that's what it's all about, getting the most amount of views and clicks and house visits and appointments as possible, because that is obviously going to create a lot of interest out there. To that end, and I know you just laid it out beautifully in terms of where you are in your life. When it comes to prices, you and Rob have both said, listen, this February, March kind of market is going to be pretty hot. If rates don't go down before then, and the anticipation is, listen, by April, maybe even May, there's going to be a rate drop, is it more beneficial to still, if you're thinking about selling your home, put it on the market February and March as opposed to waiting for the rate to drop, which might entice more buyers onto the market? What do you think?
Yeah, so here's what happens, and here's in terms of where that market, derives from or gets heated up. In my opinion, the inventory is always low in February and March, but the buyers are always there. And so what happens is the buyers are there. They're looking to set up their closings, in the late spring, early summer. And when they come to the marketplace, the buyers are there, but the inventory is low. So in regard to the interest rates, I think it's inevitable. The interest rates are coming down. I think that's for certain. The interest rates will be coming down in March, in April. But I think if you are considering selling, have your house ready to go on the market beginning to mid-February, and this will put you in a position to sell. And I've having this conversation a lot lately. You don't want to compete against 10 or 15 other homes on the market at the same time. You want to be one of very few homes on the market in your neighborhood, and that's that strategy that we always share with our sellers of getting on the market, being on the market early. And there's always a window of 2 to 3 weeks every single year in terms of the best time to sell your house. And usually, historically, that window has been in mid February to late February to early to mid March. Always, and for as long as I've been in real estate, that's always been the window that we have tried to pinpoint and how we have advised our sellers to sell to be able to get the most amount of money.
And is that one of the main differences between the market that we're in right now, that close to the Christmas holiday season, as opposed to February, which is, let's call a spade, still very cold, still wintry, not many homes on the market. The difference is in 3 months after February, I mean, people are going to be, planning their summer vacations, or, at the end of the spring market, they're getting ready to maybe change school districts like that. Those are huge factors, right?
Yeah, massive. They're all factors. And what I'm saying is, when I highlight the or pinpoint this time of year of the most opportunistic time to sell, I'm not saying that the other times are bad, right? And TD released a report stating that home prices can fall by another 10% next year. And some people have paid attention to that and said, well, I don't want to be on the market next year because, our value can fall by another 10%. But when we're in it and when we're working in it, you can kind of feel the waves of the market and where it's going and what's going on in it. My concern as well is, what if everyone's waiting for February and March? Because historically, that's always been the trend. And that's always when people have wanted to sell. So what if there's, hundreds and thousands of people out there right now that are saying, you know what, I wish I sold this year, but I'm going to wait till February and March. And if everybody comes up at that same time in terms of, listing their house, and we see new listings jump by, significant percentages, and all of a sudden the buyers don't come, well, guess what? We're going to have too much inventory and prices are going to fall. There's that case, and I'm talking about talking out both sides of my mouth. I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't. I think that with the interest rate, the interest rates falling and coming down, which is expected, and everything points toward that direction, and the buyers are still there, and they're sitting on the sidelines, but they're following the market closely. They're still there. The buyers will be back out. The listing inventory might not climb as much as we expected or we think. And that's, all these factors combined, most importantly, the interest rates coming down will look for a hot spring market.
Question that if you are putting your house on the market, you want to stay away from FSBO, for sale by owner. Phil, it's a no-go zone.
Yeah, I mean, we don't see this happen as much in our market. I think everyone looks for expert advice. Everyone looks for a trusted real estate advisor or trusted real estate agent to help them navigate and go through this process. Now, with that being said, there are still some people who want to do it themselves and try and sell their property on their own and go through these different platforms and navigate through this real estate market on their own. From my experience, and I've talked to people who have done it in the past, it's, the easiest part is putting your house up on the market, right? That's always the easiest part of every single real estate transaction, is putting the sign on the lawn, putting it up on MLS, taking pictures and going through that scenario. And that's only 1% of the entire transaction and the least stressful part and the easiest part. But when it comes to, showings and going back and forth with other agents and, working on offers and trying to generate interest and all those other little nuances in regard to the real estate transaction, that often leaves, a for sale by owner in the dark, leaves them with multiple questions in terms of where to go or who to turn to or how to do it. And that's, that's what they, why they hire a trusted real estate advisor to help them navigate through those processes. So, we often, like I said before, we don't often see it on our market. We often see of people that want to work with a real estate advisor, a real estate agent to help them, like we've said before, navigate through the biggest purchase or, decision in their life. And obviously they're someone's biggest asset and helping them navigate through that situation. But, with that being said, if, on for sale by owners, we often see a lower sales price, and we'll say, well, this is, we'll see a recent sold, and we'll say, oh, this is strange. This is a lot less than what they could have got on the open market. And it's because the seller would want to save money on the real estate commission, but they're losing even more money on the sale of their home in terms of the value. And you know, we usually see a really long selling process, right? Where somebody has a non-branded for sale by owner sign on, they're sitting on their front lawn, and it's often there for a really long time just because they're not getting the attention or the marketability that, you know, the best agents offer in terms of attracting people from other markets, attracting buyers from the GTA, putting it in front of their office and making sure that every agent in their office knows about it, and then distributing it to their own database and their own buyers. So if you don't have that marketability in that type of marketing strategy, you are going to struggle to sell your home on your own, and you're going to sit on the market for a long period of time. And then oftentimes is if you don't know what you're doing, or if you aren't prepared to do what you're doing, it's just going to lead to more stress. The selling process as it is already is one of the most stressful things you can go through, you know, as a person. We talked about the moving process, but even the selling process in terms of making that decision on, you know, do I take this offer? Do I sign it back? You know, is this the right offer for me? You know, what about navigating through conditions? We're in a market right now where we're seeing, you know, home inspection conditions, financing conditions, sale of property conditions. So all these different types of conditions that are attached to these offers, especially in this market. Gone are the days where it's, you know, buying for the asking price, over asking, firm, no conditions, away you go, you know, wait for the closing date. But there's so many different layers and levels to a real estate transaction in today's market, which is, if you don't know what you're doing or how to do it, it's going to lead to frustration and stress. And we've seen this a ton where, you know, even back in the days where there was the commission-free brokerage platforms, you know, and the support wasn't there for them, and for those people to be able to lean on their real estate agent and help them go through that, you know, offer process or selling process. So we, you know, I highly recommend finding a professional, and I've always been a proponent of hiring a professional, whether it's for selling a house or doing whatever. You know, I always believe in making sure that you hire the right person and doing that. So we, you know, like I said before at the top of the segment, we don't see a lot of for sale by owners in our market today. We've seen the, you know, the commission-free brokerage platforms disappear, especially in this market. And people are seeing the value even more of hiring a trusted real estate advisor.
Back to FSBOs, for sale by owner. And Phil, you mentioned in the previous segment that we haven't seen a lot of them over the last little while. That wasn't the case, though, back, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years ago. And we saw a few. I mean, it wasn't all over the place, but they were noticeable at least.
Yeah.
And they did a survey. There was an institution that did a survey of 1,000 home sellers who sold their homes by themselves in 2023 and last year, so very recently. And they admitted to, as you mentioned, made less money. They faced more stress. They didn't really know what they were doing. It also found 43% said that buyers distrusted them because they didn't have an agent.
Right.
They struggled to understand their contract. And maybe more egregiously, they made legal mistakes because, again, they didn't use an agent. Now, are we seeing very few, if any, FSBOs because many of these people went through the process and they're hearing the stories of others who used agents who got 20, 50, 100,000 over asking because they used an agent. It was stress-free. They didn't make those legal mistakes.
Yeah, like you know, we're on the exit of that crazy 2022 market where, you know, selling a house looked easy. And there was a lot of people that jumped up and said, oh, I'm just going to do it myself. But when in speaking to different, you know, oftentimes when somebody goes through those negative experiences, they call, you know, the most well-known, well-branded, biggest team in the city, and that's us. And so we often hear about these experiences. So the ones that you just highlighted, in terms of, that list that you just went through in terms of what people experience from a negative experience. We hear these stories all the time. And we, there's a list of stories that I have of somebody having a poor experience, whether they wanted to work with a discount brokerage or they try to do it by themselves. And they had a very similar experience to what you just highlighted. So we hear about this all the time.
Last topic today is the pre-construction versus investing in an older property. There are certainly pros and cons for each side. Just your thoughts on the pre-builds as opposed to those old and trusty and sturdy properties that people are investing in.
Yeah, I'm a little bit biased. I've never bought a pre-construction in terms of my real estate investing career. I've always been attracted to the older charm, the more developed neighborhoods, the more and often the pre-construction new homes, they're often they're very densely built in terms of a style of home, often townhouse complexes or condos or things like that. Whereas I'm more attracted to like the larger lots, the bigger homes, the more mature neighborhoods. So that's been me in terms of my personal style of investing. I've always been one to want to go into the home and check it out and feel it and touch it and smell it before I invest in it. Whereas, if you're investing into a pre-construction build, you're most often just looking at a 3D photo and a layout, and then you're years away from it being built and developed. Whereas, I want to hop into an investment and be able to hop out of it as well. If I need to move on from it for whatever certain reason. So I've always been attracted to the old charming homes and neighborhoods. And I haven't really jumped into that pre-construction life, but that's not because it's not great or not, it's not good or not attractive or it's a bad investment, but it's just in terms of what I've always known in terms of that resale residential real estate. So I've always stuck to what I've known, but I do think there are, big opportunities with that new construction, right? Often the houses that I buy, I have to go in and fix up and repair right away. And sometimes the repairs are much more than what I anticipated. Whereas if you're buying a pre-construction, you're not going to have any repairs for the first 3 to 5 years, hopefully. And everything's brand new. No one's been lived in it before. It's brand new. It's sparkling. It's clean. And sometimes it can come with, there's that allure or that attraction of the new area, new development that the old charming neighborhood just doesn't have.
Got about a minute. I wanted to ask you how the Santa Claus parades went last weekend in Stony Creek and Grimsby.
Oh, they're awesome. I mean, we love doing the Santa Claus parades. It's something that we started doing just a couple years ago. We built a float. We love being in it. The Christmas spirit is alive and well. We actually got the Niagara on the Lake parade today, which I got a jet to right after this show. So we'll be down in Niagara on the Lake today, which is awesome. But yeah, we love doing the parades. Grimsby was one of our favorites for sure. It was packed right from Livingston all the way through downtown Grimsby. It's such a nice little community that when you're going through the old kind of charming downtown, it just adds to the ambiance of the Christmas parade. So we're always super excited to do these parades, and people yelling Golfi gets it sold, and obviously it's people see our branding and our advertising out there, so it personalizes our brand a little bit more, and it's nice to see everyone out in the community and supporting us.
Now, the way that the Golfi team gives back to the community as well. Don't forget, you can listen to our show online through Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and many more. Just search for the Golfi Real Estate Show in your favorite podcast platform. Hit that follow button so you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening to the Golfi Real Estate Show. We're back next Saturday at 9 on 900 CHML.